Trans women are women. Trans men are men. Non-binary identity is real. It's a bit of a weird thing for a hockey league to say, but I guess they're part of this whole woke world we're in, and you've got to fly the rainbow flag or whatever colors are in it today. Except I didn't know this. There is an NHL-supported trans hockey league just for trans folks. And my first reaction, frankly, was, well, that's a good idea. So if that's men who identify as women, let them play against each other rather than cracking skulls of actual biological women. But then I learned that, in fact, it was trans men and trans women all playing together. And actually, it was a lot more dangerous than the NHL let on. Joining us now via Skype from Edmonton to talk about this and other things about trans in sports is our friend Linda Blade. And she is the co-author of Unsporting, a book that we published a few months ago about how trans ideology is colonizing women's sport. Linda, great to see you again. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Ezra. Great to be here.
Well, I was shocked. I saw that tweet and I didn't really understand. I just thought, okay, it's like, every once in a while, Canadian banks change their logos to the rainbow and they, then they'll change it to the Ukraine flag and then they'll do something else. It's just part of virtue signaling. I thought that's all that was going on with the NHL, but they actually have this trans hockey league. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I only heard about it when I was reading it on Twitter, more or less like everybody else did. I didn't realize the NHL was supporting a trans hockey league. And I think it's sort of just an idea and principle that they seem to be trying. But this is like a tournament where you get a bunch of your friends together and then you pick teams. And what they did was, apparently, from what I've read, was they just mixed the trans men and trans women. And we can talk about what that means, but they've mixed basically people identifying as trans, no matter whether you actually were born female or male, and they've mixed them all into one big group, and then they pick teams. And so teams were, it's very possible in that particular tournament that there could have been male bodies colliding with female bodies.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I can understand if there was a different category, just like there's different weight classes in boxing, as I alluded to. If you had a category of men to women transgender, and they were all competing against each other, I would think that there's a sort of fairness there that there isn't if they're competing against men or women without qualifiers or adjectives. But if you're combining women transitioning to men with men transitioning to women, you are not categorizing them by strength and power. And it turns out, I'm reading in this article by Jonathan Kay published in Quillette, that there were some injuries, and because some of these teams, they picked just male to female trans athletes. So obviously they were bigger, stronger, tougher, and they just smashed to pieces the female to male trans athletes. Let me read a little bit from Jonathan Kay's article here. As the Vice crew continued to film, so I guess Vice magazine was there because, of course, they're very progressive, players clustered around the seemingly knocked out number 91. Shortly thereafter, a panicky voice booms out from amid the scrum, "Get a stretcher, get a medic." And the audience, which had formerly been burbling enthusiastically in response to the arena announcer's trans-positive patter, fell silent. It would take more than 17 minutes for the head-injured player to be placed on a stretcher and wheeled off the ice. When the game eventually restarted, a subdued mood persisted till the final buzzer. So I think that what was designed to show that trans athletes could play, and it was actually was a terrible, horrible experiment that proved the opposite. I take absolutely no joy in reading this. I'm shocked that they would allow that to happen. If the idea was to have a safe place, it doesn't just have to be an emotionally safe place. It has to be a physically safe place. And having someone born female rush up against someone born male is not a safe thing to do.
Well, that's very true. And in particular, if they're all adults, what we see sometimes is Team Canada hockey, the women's hockey, sometimes plays male teams that are sort of the midget level or something, and then they take it easy on the contact. they're careful, and so they don't want to injure anybody. But when it's outright adult females, no matter how you identify, going up against high speed, on the ice, adult males, no matter how they identify, you're really asking for trouble. When World Rugby did their analysis back in about 2 years ago, they actually found that even just with running speed, the chance of injury, if there's even one male-born rugby player on the pitch with female teams, the chance of head and neck and back injury to the female players will go up 30% or more. And you can imagine what that number is going to be like when you're skating around on a hockey skate, which is a lot faster.
Yeah, it's incredible. Are there sports that are pushing back against this? It sounds like the NHL is like, I see their ads on TV. They're extremely woke. I'm all for people of all backgrounds enjoying skating. Absolutely. Doesn't care what your race, gender, etc. All of that's irrelevant to having fun playing hockey. I get it. But there's something extremely different when you're comparing, a black person and an Aboriginal person and a Chinese person by ethnicity can all play hockey. Well, of course, none of that affects hockey playing ability. None of those things are relevant to playing the game. Of course, we should look past that. And I really don't think maybe that's a hidden problem in Canada, of which I'm unaware. But here, at least in Toronto, a very multiracial city, you look at the kids' hockey leagues; they're as diverse as the city. I just don't even, I think they're 30 years behind the scenes in terms of solving a problem that I don't detect. Maybe I'm wrong, but when you say let people born genetically female play against people born genetically male, that's not an irrelevant classification. That's not unfair discrimination any more than protecting a 110-pound guy from Tyson Fury is unfair discrimination. It's not even sport, as that victim of that trans hockey league shows. I just find it creepy. Has any sport pushed back against this, Coach Blade?
Yes, well, it has begun, because we would say these big sports, starting with the International Olympic Committee, for a while were kind of fooled into believing that it didn't matter, and a man should be able to self-identify, a male person should be able to self-identify into female sports. And so what happened is these sorts of injuries have accumulated, unhappiness, it's in the women's ranks. And, frankly, last year in 2021, the IOC finally relented and said, well, it's up to each individual world sport to figure out what their policy is. And so now we're all over the place. So you have like world swimming that says zero males, after the Leah Thomas affair, zero male-born athletes in women's elite competition, but it's okay to do it at the kids level. And then you have British volleyball saying only, female only games and leagues. And then in world athletics, we're waiting for the World Track and Field to update a new policy, and they've had to change their testosterone levels. I mean, every sport governing body right now in the world has its own unique approach, and the policies are all over the place. So we're in this transition period, for want of a better word, where all the sports are pushing back in different ways, but some more extreme or more strict than others.
That's an excerpt from my show every night. It's called The Ezra Levant Show. That's me, Ezra Levant. You can see the whole thing behind our paywall. Well, there's a lot of goodies behind there. I do a show every weeknight. My friends Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies and Nat and Kat have their shows too. You get a ton of content for just $8 a month. There's so much in there you won't find anywhere else. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.